Hello, everyone. We are here to review Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I'm Eric. That is Kim. Hello, Kim.
Hello.
We've joked about before, but let's mention here that we are two Sonic movies in on a pandemic. It
Yeah.
is strange to remember that the first Sonic opened in February 2020, right before the pandemic. It was like the last big hit movie before the pandemic. And now they've produced an entirely different second movie. A little strange to look back on all that has happened since then.
I
Uh,
know.
but it's this is definitely a gangs all here sort of sequel. Everyone significant is back, both behind the scenes and in front of the camera. Jeff Fowler returns to direct. The screenplay by Pat Casey and Josh Miller once more, although this time John Winnington, it looks like, did some additional rewrites. The plot is basically Sonic. He's doing some time as a vigilante here, as we're seeing, but Dr. Robotnik manages to escape from the Mushroom Planet. Thanks to the help of Knuckles. We have a lot of big character introductions here, with Knuckles coming into the story, kind of a villain team up with Robotnik and him, and then the arrival of Tails. And there's a major MacGuffin here, which is the Master Emerald. People familiar with the games will know that. They're searching for it, trying to get it. Robotnik and Knuckles wanting it for the power it can give them, and Team Sonic trying to save the day. Kim,
Yay.
I don't remember. I mean, I know we must have talked about it again 2 years ago, and the fog of the last 2 years. So I don't remember what you thought of the first Sonic. What did you think of the first movie, and what did you think of Sonic the Hedgehog 2?
Oh, yeah. Did anybody dislike the first one? I guess so. It was fine. It was fun. I enjoyed it. I liked this one better, though, I would say. I found it, I don't know whether they'd settled into the ride. The first film was establishing the world more, I guess, and this one was just concentrating on the ride, the humor, the adventure. And it was quite an adventure. And the thing that I most liked about this film is Jim Carrey and as Robotnik. And what I love about him is he fully embraces it. At this stage in his career, he could phone it in, and he doesn't. And he really makes, he's not the only thing I liked in the film, but he really elevates the film. He gives it a lot of gusto, brings a lot of his characteristic comedy and delivery and physical humor to it. And I think that's what I'm celebrating most about this film. And it starts with the you mentioned the Mushroom Planet, and that really inventive, lovely opening that grabs you straight away, and promises to take you along on this fun ride, which for the most part it does deliver. But I did have reservations about the subplot.
We'll talk about that. Jim Carrey, he's at like a 15 here out of 10. I really like him too in this. As someone who loved him in the 90s and loved that, and again, he's never going to be for everyone with what he's doing. Anyone who goes that big is not going to be for everyone. But as someone who has a lot of nostalgia for Jim Carrey, I really like that he very much is evoking, I feel like, those sort of classic Jim Carrey performances in what he's doing in the Sonic movies. It's interesting in this one, and it's one thing that, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about. I like the first one a little more. And one thing that's interesting about this one is that in the first one, Sonic was kind of the only big digital character. There was some others in the setting up the story, but for the most of the movie, it's Sonic bouncing off of human characters. This time we've got 3 digital characters, and a lot of times it's just them, or it's just them and Jim Carrey. Which is why I want to give Jim Carrey a lot of credit, because I'm like thinking about how when he's in a scene with Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails, he's just in a scene by himself and going for it. Really going all out. I did still enjoy this movie. It was the first half was interesting because it went so into sort of the digital character thing. And look, they look like quote unquote cartoons. Very famously, they changed the design of Sonic on the first movie when they tried to make him look more realistic. It was creepy as hell. I think they made the right choice going back to the game. It makes him look more like a cartoon in a human world, but I think that works. but maybe it distanced me a little when there was so many of these characters bouncing off each other. I don't know. It almost felt like, oh, we're watching an animated movie, which is not a bad thing, but sort of a different thing I felt than from the first one on that vibe.
Well, I suppose that was kind of the purpose of the subplot, was to in part to give it some more kind of real world anchoring, although it kind of ran concurrently to the main adventure and didn't cross over that much until the end. So yeah, I'm not sure about the relevance of it so much.
Yeah, it's interesting because when James Marsden and Tika Sumpter are back in this movie, but then they leave very early. Their characters, Tom and Maddie, go off to Hawaii for her sister's wedding, and it felt like it might be one of those sequels where they're like, "Bye, we'll be back at the very end." But they actually come back in the second half. They're not totally out of the story like it seemed like they would be, but I think there's a little bit of a choppiness to kind of how it's going back and forth there. Although I will say, I did think there was some fun stuff in the second half involving humans using the Sonic characters' sort of objects and weapons and gadgets. I thought was kind of a fun little detour we took here. Let's talk though about what we thought about sort of these new main characters. We've got Tails and we've got Knuckles. Knuckles, everyone has been joking about sexy Knuckles because it's Idris Elba voicing him. And then it sort of standing apart is Tails because it's Colleen O'Shaughnessy who voices the character in the games. So it's the one actor they've retained from the games. What did you think of the introduction of these two characters?
Yeah, well, I would say that for me, Tails was the most successful, and that's in large part because of the voice casting. And I love when they cast proper voice actors in these roles because they bring something extra to it. Ben Schwartz is great as Sonic and was in the first film, and kind of when I interviewed him recently, and he talks as fast as Sonic moves, I think. But and Colleen O'Shaughnessy is equally great at this animated character, and she brings this adorability and naivety to the character that is really palpable, really enjoyable. And as great as Idris Elba is, I felt that his Knuckles was maybe a little bit not wooden, two-dimensional, maybe less effective for me. I knew it, I struggle when it's someone really famous doing a voice to buy into the character, to switch off from the fact it's an Idris Elba, especially when the voice is the same as his speaking voice.
It's funny with Idris Elba because there are a couple of scenes that are really funny. There's one in particular involving Idris Elba saying the word dot that made me laugh a lot, where they kind of introduced the idea that Knuckles is, almost like a Drax type character as far as like not just not understanding our world, but maybe taking things literally, examining things from an askew point of view. And it's pretty funny. I actually thought they should have leaned into that more because when they did it, it was very funny, but it kind of only popped up in a couple of parts. And the rest of the time, he was getting, it was kind of just like he is the villain. He's the antagonist who wants the thing. I guess here's where I know I'm going to take some heat from video game fans. I don't know if Colleen O'Shaughnessy's Tails worked for me. It's a strange thing to say, almost because her performance is a very like video game performance, like as far as like, we've got to do this thing. Like, it's like that sort of excited voice that works great in a game. But because Ben Schwartz and Idris Elba are giving much more, I know this is a weird word to say in a freaking Sonic movie, naturalistic performances. I felt like it was a little bit of a disconnect with her because it's like she's bringing that video game energy, which is understandable. That's the energy she's been asked to bring for many years in many games. But sometimes I felt like a weird disconnect between like what she was doing and what Ben Schwartz is doing. But Ben Schwartz, very funny. There are definitely some lines where you're like, that's probably an ad lib. There's a John Ralphio reference. I'm curious if that was Ben Schwartz just deciding to go for it or not.
Yeah,
Um,
there's some great lines in this, and not just from Sonic. Jim Carrey as well had some gems.
he did, and yeah, it's one of those things where you feel like this happens a lot with quote unquote family movies or kids movies where you can tell funny people wrote the movie, and there's that little bit of a thing of like you have to cater to different audiences, so sometimes you feel a little like that was a pretty groaner, and then there's something that's like, whoa, that's hysterical, a legit. Like, look, guys, there are two different jokes about farting. They don't actually have characters fart, but they make reference to, and so that goes with the territory, I suppose. Here, um, I did really like in this movie a lot of the visuals. You mentioned the opening, which is sort of Jim Carrey running around the Mushroom Planet. And there's actually some pretty cool visuals, I thought, with Sonic and Knuckles and sort of their battles. There's a part on the ocean that was actually just kind of, whoa, those are some cool big waves and Sonic, running over the water. I felt like visually this movie had more of a pop than you might expect. What do you think of sort of visually in general the movie, but also sort of the action sequences?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the sequence at the beginning of the film where Sonic kind of tears up the city streets when he's trying to thwart that robbery and living this idea of blue justice. I thought that was really effective. It was peppered with comedy, and it was, kind of thrilling as well. And later on there was this slow-mo action sequence that I thought was quite inventive too. So that's with the mushroom mushroom planet beginning. Those are three that stand out to me, which is a good ratio.
Definitely, that's true. I will say this movie did kind of exhaust me a little bit by the end for a couple reasons. One, it felt like they could have maybe trimmed some things out. Like, I love Adam Pally. If you haven't seen Happy Endings, guys, you please do. He comes back from the first one as a deputy, but I was like, did his character need to be in this movie? When I thought back on, he was there to be more comic relief, but I was like, I don't really know if his character did that much. And then this movie definitely suffers from what I'd call the sort of double conclusion. There is a sequence that I'm like, oh, this is the conclusion. There's a sky beam. It's got to be the conclusion. But then there's another that's like, oh no, this was not. This was the penultimate big event. So I did feel like pacing wise that hurt it. That it just it felt like we're here at the finish line, but then it kept going. What do you think of sort of that specific thing about the movie, but also just the pacing in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest hampering to the pacing for me was the going back and forth between the subplot and how it did that, and there was some quite unsuccessful stuff, comedy, I suppose, within the subplot that that made it feel like one of those made for TV romantic comedies that you see a lot at Christmas. It could have been a Christmas movie. Hallmark movie, and that was the biggest problem for me when it came to pacing.
Right. To be specific, you're talking about like the Hawaii stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like it serves its purpose to a point, but then there's some stuff where it's like, did we need all that stuff with the Shamar Moore character? Yeah, I don't know. It feels like again, like Shamar Moore's character, Adam Pally's character could have probably been pulled back a little bit. Although I do want to say that Lee Majda returning as Stone, who is sort of the assistant to Robotnik, I think is very funny once more with his sort of absolute adoring of Robotnik, which is just not reciprocal. Kim, what overall would you rate this movie out of 5 stars?
I would give it a 3, and that is because, I think overall the franchise is shaping up to be a really fun, family-friendly franchise of the type that I feel that there aren't so many around of. And that we did a poll recently on the, or there was a poll on the fandom community asking for favorite Sonic characters, and being that there were so many that came through that, there's a lot for them to draw on for future films. So I'm positive about the future of the franchise, but here the subplot knocked it down really for me a couple of pegs.
Mm-hmm. I am also giving it a 3. Yeah, I did like the first one a little more. I felt like it just was a little more cohesive. This one felt a little jumpy, if that's the right word, and like they could have pulled back a few things. But I do think it definitely sort of accomplishes what it's trying to do. And if you're a big Sonic fan, there's plenty. There's like a ton of Easter eggs, references. There's so many little parts. It was funny in the closing credits. I was listening to a guy who knew everything about the games talk to his friends who didn't know anything about them, and he's like, and this and this and this, and like going through it all. So there's plenty there to appreciate about it, and definitely some jokes I think that everyone will like throughout the film. So 3 for me too. All right, guys, that is our thoughts on Sonic the Hedgehog 2. We'll see if they get another one of these out in 2 years, and hopefully there's no more pandemic to talk about, but we'll find out. Kim, thanks for joining me.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll be back, guys, here at Fandom. Thanks. Bye.